don't see much
No,
anyways,
right.
right?
18th?
Feels faster in the dark anyway.
Red light.
The one on the 18th, the one in
Oh,
Bath.
for
I'd like to bring this meeting to order.
Yeah.
You stand for the pledge to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Start our meeting.
All right. First item,
Roll call.
roll call.
Counselor Moore?
Here.
Counselor Robichaud?
Here.
Counselor Kane?
Here.
Counselor Fellows?
Here.
Counselor Keller?
Here.
Counselor Larichelle?
Here.
You miss me?
I'm sorry? Oh, jeez. Lunt. Counselor Lunt?
Here.
Sorry. I didn't miss you. Next item, good news and recognition.
Does anybody in the audience have any good news or recognition? There being none, next item.
Public hearings. Once the chair opens a public hearing, those present who wish to speak may approach the lectern to address the council chair. Please use a microphone and state your name for the record. A, special entertainment permit for Flex Restaurant, LLC.
I'll open that public hearing. Anybody here to speak to Flux? There being none, I'll close that hearing.
Next is liquor license for Olive Pit Brewing Company, LLC.
I'll open that public hearing. Seeing no comment, I'll close that hearing.
Next item, audience participation and response for agenda items. At this time, those in the audience who wish to speak may approach the lectern to address items or issues that are on the agenda. Please use a microphone and state your name for the record.
Hi,
Hi.
I'm Kelly Rogers. I am a resident. I live on County Road. And I know that the school budget is going to be presented this evening. And I, as a member, also a member of the school committee, I think something that's really important as we listen to what's being presented, I know it's going to be a lot of numbers, but I think that something that's really important to remember as we're hearing about the numbers and the bottom line is that over the past several years, we have worked really hard to rebuild our school system. We have been pretty bare bones for a long time, and over the past couple of years, especially through COVID, we've worked really hard to ensure our kids are getting their needs met through our school system. And so, you know, there is nothing in this budget that feels fluffy. There is no fluff. We still have room to grow. And so I think what's really important is just that as you hear about ahead of time, I hope that you can just sort of understand that there's been a lot of feedback and consideration of what the current needs are. So just as a community member, you know, I really value, I see the value that school systems bring to towns, and especially where it feels like our town has continued to grow over the past several years. You know, I just want to make sure that our schools continue to grow with that and can better meet the range of needs that of learners that walk through our doors. So, thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Seeing none, next item.
Consent agenda. Consent agenda items are considered routine and will be considered for adoption by one motion with no separate discussion unless a council requests an item be removed. Any councilor wishing to remove an item may do so now. Seeing none, Order 2023-38 to approve the municipal accounts payable warrants, $253,353.84. Municipal payroll warrants, $248,757.52. School accounts payable warrants, $144,717.48. School payroll warrants, $356,586.19. Approve the minutes of February 21st, 2023. special entertainment and liquor license for Flex Restaurant LLC, and set public hearing for March 21st for victualer's license for Elite Nutrition.
Make a motion we approve as spoken.
Second?
Roll call.
Roll call, please.
Counselor Moore,
Aye.
Counselor Robichaud,
Yes.
Counselor Kane,
Yes.
Counselor Fellows,
Yes.
Counselor Keller,
Yes.
Counselor LaRochelle,
Yes.
Counselor Lunt.
Yes.
7 yeas, 0 nays. Order passed 7-0.
Next item.
Council orders, resolutions, and ordinances. Per Lisbon Ordinance, Section 74-201E7C, abstentions, where a councilor intends to abstain from participation in voting on a particular item, they shall advise the other councilors present as soon as that item is placed on the floor of intent not to participate and to abstain from voting, and the reasons that the abstention is required. Order 2023-39, liquor license for Olive Pit Brewing Company, LLC.
Mr. Chair, I wish to abstain from that due to my personal involvement with that business.
Granted.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Roll call. Counselor Moore,
Aye.
Counselor Robichaud,
Yes.
Counselor Kane,
Abstain?
Counselor Fellows,
Yes.
Counselor Keller,
Yes.
Counselor LaRochelle,
Yes.
Counselor Lunt.
Yes.
6 yeas, 1 abstention. Order passed 6-0. Next item. Order 2023-40, school budget presentation to Council and Finance Committee.
School budget. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you. I apologize. I just realized that the paperwork that I sent you, I must have left on my desk, but I do have the PDF, so I'm going to read from that because the overview that I provided to each of you emphasizes a lot of what I'm going to be sharing. I have a presentation that I'll go to here in a second, but I just wanted to read the following opening statement in regard to the budget that we're and the numbers that we're proposing this evening. For those of you that are new to the council or haven't had an opportunity, this isn't the first time that we presented. It's the first time I presented to you, but the school budget has been presented in very specific details, like line item by department, by section, earlier in the year. And so it's recorded, so if you wanted to go back and look at the actual numbers and the different increases and decreases and stuff, you have that opportunity. So tonight is just a general overview, and this is similar to what I've done to for the council prior to you adopting it later on. I think it's in May. So I want to read this, and then I'll go over the budget, and then if those of you that have had an opportunity or maybe seen the initial presentation or looking at these, because it is a lot of numbers, if any of you have questions, you can ask me this evening or reach out to me. I'll give you my contact information so you can reach out with any questions moving forward. The proposed 2023-24 school budget figures that I'm sharing with you this evening, as in the past, still have a few remaining variables that could impact the budget both positively and negatively, and I'll be providing you with a list of those both in the presentation and at the end of this, towards the end of this document. An overview of the financials is summarized by the updated subsidy comparison report dated March 1st, 2023, and a list of the remaining variables is provided below as part of my presentation this evening. Now, the subsidy after I presented the entire budget to the school committee, what we've done historically is I provided updated copies of the subsidy comparison report, because that's really what people are interested in, because it sees last year's, this year's, and then ultimately what the impact is to local taxes, and that's, in most of these conversations, that's what most people are interested in knowing about. And so whenever we update that, I'll give you the date of the subsidy comparison report. Same thing when I do it for the school committee, and you'll be able to make sure when you look at the bottom left-hand corner, whichever document you have, we want to make sure that that date lines up. And the one that we have now, I've already presented one for February. This is the most recent one. There's a couple of changes. It's a little bit, it's like $5,000 less of a reduction in taxes, and that's a result of our adult education numbers coming in a little bit different. So those are the types of things that are going to happen between now and when you go to adopt the budget in May. Over the last few years, the Lisbon School Department has been faced with many challenges as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. The negative impact that the pandemic has caused on the social and emotional well-being of our students and staff is still unknown. We knew it was going to be a problem, but it's really starting to show, and it's not just in our district, but in a lot of the districts, the social emotional needs of both students, especially students, the younger students who have been they haven't been able to socialize and be around other kids, is really starting to show. Some of our biggest challenges are in the lower grades versus our older grades. With that being said, Lisbon School Committee, as you just heard, has been proactive in acknowledging these increased needs by adding additional staff to provide the services required to help identify and support our students and staff. Another direct result, and there's been a lot of additions. If you look at over the last couple of years, we've added a curriculum director who's helped with instruction. We would have never been able to make it through the pandemic and do the full in-person learning that we were able to do without that position. There's a number of other classroom positions as far as student numbers, classroom sizes. I believe it's 8 or 9 positions that have been added. So you've seen that in my prior presentations of the increases and why, because we have received additional state funding, but those increases have basically helped to cover the costs of being able to provide the support services that we need for our students. Another direct result of the pandemic involves the fact that since the start of the pandemic, the housing market in Lisbon has been one of the most active in the entire state. I've seen all kinds of different charts where Lisbon is like top 5 as far as housing and purchases in the entire state. As a result, our total student enrollment has continued to increase to numbers higher than they were prior to the pandemic, and that's unlike almost all districts north of the Androscoggin River. A lot of the surrounding districts around us have 90, 100 less students. We have, on paper, it shows about 100 additional students, but looking at our numbers, it's between 50 and 60. But you have to remember that the state's numbers are about 2 years old, and so that's something you have to. Their data is different than what our actual. But our numbers are actually higher than they were prior to COVID. And as a result, of course, our student numbers have gone up. The school committee has been aware of these numbers and, again, tried to be proactive by adding additional classroom staff to keep the average classroom sizes manageable. Adding all these additional supports and services have come with a cost that has impacted our proposals over the last 2 years, and we would like to thank the Town Council and voters for their continued support. With that being said, the 2023-24 proposed budget has been directly influenced by our current student enrollment numbers, which has resulted in the Lisbon School Department receiving an additional $776,847 in state subsidy this year. The additional funding has allowed us to present an initial proposal this evening that would result in a decrease to the local taxes of $32,194. Although this amount is not significant enough to make much of a noticeable difference, I believe it's a 0.0003%. In your individual tax bills, the current proposed budget focuses on our needs while also addressing the financial challenges that we are all facing in this current economy. As in the past, any changes to our budget will be included in updated subsidy comparison reports, as most people, as I mentioned before, are generally more interested in knowing what the actual impact will be to their local taxes. As you can see from the budget summary report, and that's like the 50 pages of all the individual lines. As you can see from that report, the majority of the increases to this budget are the direct result of our increases in salaries and benefits, which are contractual. And currently, we have the insurance budgeted for 9%, and we are also honoring and following the approved process that we agreed to as we continue our negotiations with the LEA, which is the Teachers Association. We were able to negotiate contracts for the administrators and the support staff last year. that was another challenge as a result of COVID, is all 3 of our collective bargaining agreements, one's a local agreement, the other 2 collective bargaining agreements all were due in the same year, and to negotiate three major contracts was a challenge. Our primary goal for the 23-24 school budget was to maintain the current student programs and services by including $164,425 of federal money. This is it's on your sheet on that subsidy comparison report. You'll see where it's an ARF file. I'll talk to you about that. It's under the revenue. That's federal money that we use to help pay for 3 positions, 2 at halftime, 1 at full time. Those are positions. Those are trauma guidance counselors. And so what we did is we've taken last year we put 50% into the budget. This year we put the remaining 50% into our actual operating costs. So that's about $164,000 of those ESSER funds, ARF funds, that we put into this year's budget. Now, as a district, the school committee was very smart, as many of you know, as during my other presentations. The majority, we did receive a lot more than $164,000, obviously, in federal money because of COVID. We spent the majority of those funds working on trying to upgrade our HVAC, and which improved health, improved air quality, improved heat, improved all those things. So we put all that money into our infrastructure. We were lucky because we have a capital plan that has all these different pieces that we needed to do. And if you've ever seen our capital plan, you look at all the things we've accomplished. A big chunk of those were a result of us using these federal funds to take care of that. Like, I met with the new teachers today, and a lot of them are obviously new this year, so they weren't here during COVID when we were doing all the restrictions. But they didn't realize that we have like ionizers in all the classrooms and stuff. So every single night, these ionizers are working, and it's killing germs. And so the heating units, the efficiency, there's so many different things. I try not to think back at COVID during the COVID years, but I can tell you that the amount of improvements that we were able to make to our infrastructure is pretty significant. So we were happy to do that. But what I was getting at is a lot of districts, if you saw in the news, there's local districts that they have a lot. They're already anticipating big layoffs and reductions in their budget because they use those ESSER funds and ARF funds to pay for staff. So we did a different approach. And so as a result, we didn't create what we call a cliff. And so this year, we don't have, the only thing we have to add is $164,000, whereas some districts that I know of they need to add 1-point-something million. And so in order to keep those positions, they'll have to raise that locally. And I'm sure that if I came to you with a 1-point-something million increase, it would I'd have a lot more questions than I'm hopefully going to get tonight. So the subsidy comparison report, and then I'll get into my presentation here shortly, is, as you can see from the updated subsidy comparison report, the total operational costs increase for the 23-24 school year is $569,154, with a decrease in taxes of $32,194. Now, a big portion of that, which I'll get into, or which I'll be able to share, is our actual salaries and benefits alone are $554,426. So I can almost tell you that the increases, those additional that additional funding, is mainly professional services for our accountant software and our insurance through Maine School Management. And if you look through all those pages, you will see that there's a lot of zeros, and the increases are as salaries and benefits. Now, there still are some remaining variables. Anticipated actual resignations. That can be a positive and a negative. A lot of people believe that when somebody who has a lot of years of experience retires, that you save all this money. Well, the difference is that generally if you bring somebody in who has less experience, their salaries are different, but the insurance needs are different. Somebody who's retiring may be single, 2-person. Somebody who's coming in may need full family. And so that your savings, it's not as big of a savings as a lot of people realize when you start adding in benefits. But that can change, and we could lose a person, and their salary could be whatever, and the person we hire could be paid more, could be paid less. So that's a variable that could go, that's positive, that could be a positive, negative. the reason why I put in there, but I've already lined out the anticipated or actual retirements, is that because for staff who retire that have worked in the district for 20 years, they can cash in. They can receive a cash in lieu benefit for their sick days up to like 30 days of sick days per day. So if you work in the district 20 years, then that is a benefit. So we have to add that as part of our budget. But March 1st is already passed, and we're already aware that we only have one person right now that's retiring that would be able to take that benefit. Capital reserve is part of revenue. Those funds come from the unassigned, and we put it in a capital reserve. Right now, we have capital reserve built into our budget that pays for the performance contract from Siemens, who's our HVAC provider. The Gartley Street School, the reason why they're in there is because they generate revenue based on regional districts. If they send their students to our program, they pay tuition. Since COVID hit, a lot of those students haven't been, so our numbers are much lower at Gartley Street, but they still generate through Maine Care and stuff. They still generate the $300,000, as you'll see on the subsidy comparison report, their revenue. So it helps cover and offset the cost of our budget. Health insurance is always a variable this time of year. We have it budgeted at 9%. If it comes in, usually a 1% is around $20,000. It's actually 160. It's actually a little bit less than that this year. So 9% is actually 160,358. So whatever percentage that comes in, either below, it's usually capped at 9%, or it has been. So hopefully, if it's less than that, then there could be some savings. LEA negotiations, it's ongoing, and as I mentioned before, we're going to honor the process and the agreement that we had when we started. Regular instruction reserve account transfer, we did use that this year. What that is a couple of years ago, there was additional subsidy that was sent to schools, and because it was after the budget had already been approved, legally you can't spend more than what your budget was approved for. So instead of going to another referendum, the governor allowed us to create a capital regular instruction reserve account, and so we put those additional funds in there, knowing that over time we could use those to help offset our budgets. And you'll see under revenues, under the subsidy comparison report that we did, we lowered the amount of the unassigned balance, and we increased our use money for regular instruction. And we actually just received, because of our high numbers in pre-K, we just received another $100-something thousand in additional subsidy this year that wasn't calculated in the original ED 279, so we'll add that in there. So we'll be able to use those funds for the next couple of years to help offset the budget. The service center, that is something we've been part of. It was the prior governors. It was a big initiative to be part of that, and you received additional subsidy. So we do receive additional subsidy, and what that is we are part of a regional group that does a lot of professional development work as a region, and so it saves. We receive subsidy to help pay for that. It's a win-win for us, and it's a win-win obviously for the state, because they're paying by having people consolidate their resources and stuff. They're able to save money on for different professional developments and different other options. State funding, we already have our preliminary ED 279. It's very rare that they will change that unless there's a loss, unless they built a budget that is relying on revenues and the revenues don't come in, and then they'll do what they call a curtailment in the spring. But they haven't done a curtailment in a number of years. But it is a possibility. But so I've taken that out. Now, special education enrollment, that can change on a daily basis. And if students come in and they're coming from a school district where our housing market is so competitive and/or popular right now, if families come in with a student who needs outside district services, we have to provide those. And so those numbers, and it doesn't take long. One student can, I've seen costs as high as close to $100,000, $90,000+ plus transportation to send a kid to a facility or school that can provide the services that they need, especially if it's a medical model type of situation. So those numbers can go up if we have a student here that leaves, or if a student moves in. Those numbers can fluctuate. So special ed is a wild card at any point. Unanticipated revenue, those are things if we receive revenue for students and stuff that we didn't anticipate. and the unassigned fund balance, which is the balance that the auditors present to you at the end of the year. Whatever money we have left over gets put into the unassigned account, and then we've used that to offset our budget and also to use it for capital reserve, because a lot of the other, prior to the ESSER funds, the ARF funds, the federal money, to do a lot of our projects, the majority of the projects that we've done in this town, or at least for the school, have all been paid for through those unassigned. So we haven't had to go to referendum for anything, including last year we had the boiler LCS that broke, and we couldn't get a replacement. So we couldn't repair it, we had to get a replacement, and so that was $100. So at this time I was doing a capital reserve request for the council to pay for a boiler. So things like that, we've been able to use these funds, these leftover remaining funds, to do a lot of projects around the buildings. As I mentioned before, the notable increases, decreases, and is the salaries and benefits. I already shared what our salaries and benefits are, and then our insurance, what it's budgeted at. The trauma support services has been added in there. That's 50% of 3 people. And our maintenance contracts increased because of all the infrastructure stuff that we put in. It has to be serviced, so our contract increased. And main school management, our insurance increased. And purchase services, I already mentioned, our accountant software. And JMG is our Jobs for Maine Graduates program that we have 2 teachers that are part of that program that work for an outside agency, but they come in and they provide the Jobs for Maine Graduates curriculum to our middle and high school students. So before I go into the subsidy comparison report, or my presentation, is there any questions?
I have a question about how is is there any shortages in staff right now?
We have a psychologist that resigned at the beginning of the year, and we have had a hard time filling out. We've been able to contract out, and that's the challenge is like there's certain positions. A lot of our specialists or service providers, like a nurse or psychologist, they can make so much more money working on the outside than they can for a school, because in a school district, they are part of the teacher's contract. So it's a good thing and a bad thing, because like a nurse, they don't need to have a bachelor's degree to be somebody who's been a nurse for a long time. They may not have a bachelor's degree, so if they come to work for us, they have to have a bachelor's degree. But anyway, so there's certain positions. That's one, but prior to the person that we had in there, we actually went 3 years once without a psychologist, but we're able to contract it out. So as long as we have it advertised to bring in somebody, then we have to utilize outside services. As far as teachers, we've had a special ed position, a new one that we've added, that we wanted to add. The problem is to get people to leave mid-year. It's not like schools are a little bit different than probably like a regular business where people give their 2-week or 30-day notice. Teachers are pretty attached to the kids, and for them to leave, they understand the impact that could have. So we had one person who probably will apply in the spring, but they just didn't feel comfortable leaving their students. So those positions. Now we believe there's been a statewide teacher shortage, but a lot of it has to do with the fact that so many schools have had all this extra federal money, in my opinion, and based on my conversations with them, they've had all this federal money, so they've added all these support services to their staff. The problem is now they have to pay for it. So I don't believe in our location, with the exception, we're obviously so close to Cumberland County, and some of those schools their salaries are much higher than ours. But on this side of the river, we're pretty competitive. So we're actually in a good spot. So we get a lot of people from surrounding, like larger schools that are right next to us. We get a lot of people who have 2-3 years experience. They want to come to a smaller district, or they want to relocate. They've been down east, central Maine, western Maine. So we have benefited. We've never had a problem really filling those positions. Now, ed techs have been a challenge. They're always a challenge, especially with if you drive down 196, all the bonuses and stuff that people can get. But and bus drivers. But we just hired another bus driver yesterday. So we're like I wouldn't say we
Getting there.
don't have a huge list of extras, but we have been able to fill the majority of our positions. And teaching positions, the classroom ones, we've been able to fill those. Yep.
Do you get a lot of substitutes? Are you using a lot of substitutes?
We put out for substitutes, and they do the training and everything. But it's probably more of a core. There's like, I would say there's probably half a dozen or so people who live locally that do the majority of our sub. And then teachers, if it's only for one period, there's money, there's opportunities for teachers. If they give up their planning time, they can earn additional money to cover those classes. So instead of bringing somebody in for a half day, we can just pay a teacher for 1 hour or whatever the time is. But we have subs, and they come and go, and right now it's not well, if you want to work, it's not hard to find work.
Right.
And so we've struggled with, just like any other place, with shortages. But I think we're in a much better spot than a lot of districts, especially those that are in Western Maine, Northern Maine, down east, Central. Like when I talk to those superintendents, they're short. I mean, we have a district right next to us, a big, one of the larger cities that has, I think, like 50 plus openings. So
Right.
we're in pretty good shape.
Now, the SROs in the schools, you're back to 2 SROs.
Correct.
Has that worked out well for the school?
Yeah, that's worked out fine. I mean, it is something that we have talked about. One of the things is we pay for a percentage of one of the SROs, and I know I haven't had a chance to talk to the chief, but there was conversations about just having that, because as far as supervision goes, and as far as like leave requests, we don't really control those. We don't supervise, so it is something that we have talked about. If that was all under the police budget, then we wouldn't have to worry about sending
partially
checks.
fund one, right? And then
Partially fund one, and then the other one was part of, is on the municipal side. Yep. So this one is 170, like 77% we pay for, and then the rest is paid for on the municipal side. So we get invoiced. It just would be probably a lot cleaner where it's, and we don't, my building administrators really aren't, I don't think are considered, at least in the SRO, as far as I know, like their supervisor is actually the detective here in the department, whereas our other staff, we supervise. So if there's issues, we can address that. I'm not saying there's issues, but I'm just saying that it's kind of it came from before this 20-something years ago. It was part of a grant, and the grant slowly disappeared, and then the school took over the 70-something%. So if there was conversations about moving that back into the municipal side just to clear up that paperwork or whatever, that's something I know we talked about last year, but he's not here, so I haven't had that conversation with him this year. But
do you
I don't want to add 70,000 to your budget either.
Do you know what % of time the SRO spends at Gartley School?
They're generally, it's a on-call and or like a I'd have to look at the schedules, but as far as like a percentage, there's no like set schedule or percentage. It's based on as needed. It's no different than at the nurse. Like we don't have a nurse full time at the Gartley Street. We have a nurse that's on call and can go down and like a couple of years ago, we had a student who was diagnosed with diabetes, so we needed to do a transition and support and create a plan and train staff so that they know how to regulate it.
Right.
But there's no like set like Mondays are here, and we don't do that anyway with our SROs. We don't we try not to do a set schedule because you want
you don't want
anybody
to be random.
think that they know when somebody's not going to be there.
Yeah. Okay, that's all I got. I don't mean to filibuster, but anybody else? Okay.
All right. So what I'd like to do, or what I'm going to attempt to do, is I will attempt to share my screen so that Dawn can follow. Let's see.
It usually works.
Palm trees in the background.
I have are you looking at the subsidy comparison sheet now?
No, I'm actually going to go through my presentation, and then I can talk a little bit about what that looks like, and then go through it. I mean, the subsidy comparison report is going to contain a lot of the information, a lot of the different items. And I don't know how much detail you want me to go through. I've done that through this for the school, but I'd be more than happy to. I just don't want to. It's a lot of numbers. I don't want to like overwhelm you or make you confuse you. So Don, can you see that?
Like you said, you know the ones on the subsidy comparison that are most important to
Correct.
us, so yes, I can see.
All right, perfect. So this is obviously our mission and our vision. The Lisbon School Department is united with our community to provide a personalized, innovative education for all learners in an ever-changing world. And our vision is all students learn in different ways and in different time frames. The budget goals, they are a little different. Just more wordsmithing, I think, more than anything, but a little bit of a focus, especially on the first one, is to improve and or increase, when possible, all existing programs with a focus on students' academic and social-emotional growth. Remain focused on our mission and vision. Maintain existing 5-year capital plan. Consider technology improvements. Maintain professional development and time for staff. And maintain program facility improvements linked to NEASC and general facility improvements at LCS, PWS, and Gartley Street. Now, I will say that for years, the focus has been almost entirely on the high school just because of NEASC. So that one goal has changed. Our focus really now is being transitioned more into the middle school. We had a future search a couple of years ago, right prior to COVID, and the community was more aware of the needs at the middle school and some of the things we have to do there. Now we've done some things, but obviously that's really where the focus is right now. The proposed budget is based on our preliminary ED 279 figures, and I don't think I mentioned what that is. The ED 279 is actually the form that we receive from the state that tells us what all our subsidy numbers are. It calculates your an ED 279 gives you the basic numbers or estimates on what you would need to operate a school. Now it's the bare minimum. So for instance, when you look at it, it'll show that we are over on nurses because even though we have 3 nurses, 4 buildings, we're over because the state says that you only need 1 nurse per. I can't even remember the number, but I think the state thinks this formula believes that we only need like 1.2 nurses, and we have 3. So that's where when I get to the over the essential programs and services, that's where that model comes from, because it takes what that formula and then it looks at what we're actually doing, and that's how they calculate if you're over essential programs or services or not. This preliminary budget maintains all of our existing programs and services. The anticipated increase as a result of just salaries and benefits alone, as I already shared, is $554,426. As a result, the overall budget has an increase of 3%, or $574,199. And then as of today, this proposed budget would result in a 0.004%, or $32,194 decrease in the local contribution, which is what you contribute for your taxes. The subsidy comparison report has a number of different pieces to it. You have the total budget, the unassigned fund balance, the anticipated revenue, local-only debt service, essential programs and services, which is what I was discussing as far as the ED 279, the total additional local funds, which is what you have to raise locally for your taxes, the state subsidy, required local contribution, and the total local funding. I've gone over these variables already, so these are what's left, and these can be a positive or a negative on our budget. And if for whatever reason you don't have any questions tonight, but you think of something or you see something as you're looking through all that paperwork, feel free. You can contact me directly at my email or at my extension at central office, which is provided in that slideshow. So with that being said, would you like me to go over the subsidy comparison report, or are you comfortable?
Unless you want to put it on the record, but I don't. I mean, it's pretty,
Most people are only concerned about the bottom line,
yeah.
basically the bottom line. All the other numbers are what's factored in when we get our ED 279, and it shows you the tax impact and the total increase. So those are usually those are only two that I'm usually asked about. I can go through and explain all the different pieces to it, but I've done that for the school committee and during their budget presentation.
Mr. Chairman, may I?
Yes.
Very unusual to see a flat budget with nothing else, right? I mean, that's kind of unusual, especially since you have that $500,000 yearly uncontrollable increase that's always been there. Just in kind of a quick overview, I mean, there is that increase, right? Because that's something that always comes every year. Mm-hmm. But if you were to summarize why you're able to do a flat budget this year compared to years past, would you say that's because of cost savings or just extra revenue pulled in from different areas, I guess?
It's because we didn't, it's because the additional state subsidy that we received, we just put it right straight towards, we already had the positions. Yeah. We had positions that we added the last couple of years. That's why we've had, because we've had increase in state subsidy in years past. The difference is that, as Kelly was saying this evening, is that we've been trying to repair or rebuild some of the positions and supports like curriculum director, those types of things. We've been trying to bring those back because we needed them. And so with that additional subsidy, we've been able to prepare or present budgets, and it's been increases. Although it's been below the 500, it's still 300 plus and 1,000 or whatever. And then we acknowledge that, and then knowing that we have, the school department has looked at already, adding some additional supports for this year. And so there's two supports that are already in this budget already. And we have through attrition, whether it's resignations or stuff, we are able to look at or reprogramming. We are able to add an additional assistant principal at the elementary school, which is probably something that should have been there from the start. But by doing that, we'll be able to free up staff, or we'll be able to provide supports for staff. And then the additional special ed teacher, which we've had advertised for the last few months, that position has been added. Now we have what we call tier 2 positions that we're looking at, and one of the administration made their recommendations to the school committee is that if funds become available, let's say our insurance comes in at 1% and we're able to save money there, then the school committee probably wouldn't propose that we would add that as a decrease, but instead we probably would add one of the position that most people that the administration are interested in is having a full-time athletic director. And then there's additional classroom positions. There's a list of tier 2 items that we're looking at. The first two I already mentioned are already in here. The other ones are really close to being added. So it's more than likely that if we had a full-time athletic director, then the assistant principals would be able to focus on kids and supporting teachers versus worrying about rescheduling a game.
So pretty much you were able to achieve this by maintaining your expenditures, right? Keeping
yeah, everything is based on. Everything is, last year we had increases in supplies and stuff. We didn't do that this year. It's because we received the 700-something thousand in state subsidies, so we're able to put that. So if you take the 700-something thousand, you deduct the 160,000 of ESSER funds, it's going to come out to about it's right there. I mean, if you look at our budget sheets, there's so many zeros. When I do the presentation, it used to take 2 nights, and we did it in 2 hours. Maybe, and that's like going line for line. And we don't. One of the things that the school department hasn't done for years is we don't come in with a wish list, and then think that let's ask for 100,000. We only need 20, and if we get 50, then we're better. We don't do that.
Been done many different ways over the years.
Right. So I meet with administration. They give me their proposals. I take anything that's an addition. I create a tier 2. We've been calling it tier 2 all year. But I create that list, and then I share it with the school committee and then the school committee will give me their recommendations. I'll say, this is what we have. This is what the administration is asking for under tier for if they had the funds, or some things fall into place. If somebody resigns or whatever, because some programs you can't fill. I know, but anyway, then we would go to the tier 2. We would go to those tier 2. And last year we had, at this time, we were hoping to add additional, I think it was a 5th, a middle school position for the 7th grade, and a third grade. So at this time, we were hoping to get those in, and then when our insurance came in lower, we were able to put those in without changing the numbers so that it wasn't like, a big an increase.
I hope your insurance comes out, because I've heard this year it could be double digits in some areas, so.
Well, they've capped it at 9% and I think they would have warned us. We've been lucky. We've had a couple of zeros and a 1, I think, or a 2. So I'm anticipating a good
Something,
9%
yeah.
at some point.
Go ahead.
The athletic director, you mentioned that. Was there other requests that came forward that you just kind of put on the back burner this year?
We prioritized them, but there's additional guidance, especially like looking at high school or shared guidance, additional a elective at the middle school, elective teacher at the middle school, and to be shared with you with the elementary or high school, because we don't have foreign language at the middle school anymore. That we moved them both full time at the high school, and I think there's nurse. We're able to get by with what we have right now. They have a pretty
Busy
moving schedule, but they seem to be doing really well. Is there? There's only 3 or 4. I don't have a list in front of me.
No problem. Just curious. One last thing. So, growth, right? So, the last couple of years we've seen some pretty good growth, and the numbers kind of vary. Everybody mentions anywhere from 300 to 400 new residents moved in over COVID to our area. One of the goals that council had last year that's moving forward is to try to get another 200 to 250 more housing units in the community. Would the school be able to entertain that? If those were all, that's the biggest question I have.
As long as they're not 7th grade.
What's that? Yeah. Well, the wish things, we just got to be careful what we wish for.
Or 3rd grade. Or 1st.
Yeah.
As long as they don't come in those grades, we're pretty good. But well, yeah, we had the academy closed, and when we received the letter, I want to say there was out of all those kids, there was like 12 of them in 7th grade. They all haven't registered. But anyway.
Some of the market study we did actually has some pretty decent numbers of what they estimate for growth over the next 5 years or so, and if it continues like it has, there are just definitely some serious conversations going to need to happen. So I'm not sure if at what point growth actually becomes an overwhelming concern or emergency. So
yeah, I think the school committee is they're aware of the growth. We've been watching it. I report out. I know those grades. That's not really a joke. I have to report on those because those are the ones. And historically, in the past, I was able to approve superintendent agreements. During COVID, because we were full in person, I could have doubled our population because surrounding schools wanted their kids in school every day. But so we've stopped. I've had to really monitor how many new kids I let in from out of district. But as far as like numbers and stuff, you remember, the middle school when I was there was a portable. There was 2 classrooms out. There were 6 classrooms outside, and when you talk to certain individuals, and the high school used to have hundreds more kids there somehow. I think those kids are pretty big and
too, right?
bigger, faster, stronger than maybe what they were 20 years ago. But so like LCS, where we moved 6th grade back to the middle school, the LCS probably has enough capacity to add. If you go in there, there's people who have like volunteers have their own classroom. There's things like that we would have to change. But the school committee is well aware of that, and the reason why the first goal was changed was because of to make sure we monitor classroom size. So if you watch any of our meetings, the emphasis, or at least the conversations we're watching that pretty closely, making sure we have the people in place to do that. We actually have the one additional teacher that we added last year that is at the middle school to help teach. Right now, it's they're teaching classes for 7th grade to reduce the class sizes because there's certain content areas, not Spanish, science and social studies. A lot of kids who receive special services and stuff don't get pulled from those. So those classes can be up to 25, 27 plus students. So by adding that additional support certified teacher, they're able to lower those class sizes in those grades. So and they can work with other grades too. So it's almost going to be like, because obviously with the other grades coming up, there's another 5th grade. Anything over 100 makes things a challenge. And we've had classes that have gone through at 114, 120 that have gone through. And when those hit the middle school, high school, it's a little bit easier. I mean, they still have like some of the elective classes and stuff get pretty large, the ones that the kids are they're required to take. But at the middle school, it becomes a real challenge because those having 25 plus kids in a classroom is a lot. So we're looking at that, and we're trying to, we're aware of it. And like I said, I report on the class sizes of those particular grades every single month, and then I haven't allowed any new superintendent agreements to come into those grades.
I know we worked really hard to get rid of those modulars when that all took place, so
Yeah,
you'd
they
hate
were.
to see it happen again.
I mean, we
so.
still have the one we had to put out there, but that's a condo compared to those old ones we used to have.
The trellis.
And what we were paying, if you remember, the money we saved off
$1,000 a
those
month or
off
something
the
crazy, yeah.
renting those, we were able to redo the front of the high school, all those windows and siding and everything. We were spending, it was 30 or 40,000, if I remember right. It was like 30-something thousand, because that's what the bond came out to a year on renting those things.
Yeah. No, just a point. I mean, it's something we do see growth, so we just want to
Yeah.
make sure that we keep on top of it. That's all. I'm all good.
Don, did you have something?
I just wanted to clarify something. I think I heard Dr. Green say that this is pretty much what he anticipates to be the bottom line budget. And I get that conclusion because you said if there were significant savings in other places, you do your two-tier or second-tier list to add to it to make it come out about the same. Did I get that right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to speak for the school committee, but I'm assuming they're nodding their heads, I guess. So that's.
Well, tier 2 isn't fluffy ass, like we said. Like we have room to go before we are at a place where we could be like, our needs are being met right now. So it's not. I mean, those are all priorities. It's not.
Yeah, we just don't have the funding right. We don't have the money built in the budget right now to 100% say that it's covered, but it's close. The next one, the AD one, would be one that's pretty close right now. But yes, you are right. It's probably going to be that, or something really drastic would have to happen before it would be an increase. Could be 0 when we bring it to you in May, but but I highly doubt there's going to be. I can't imagine what would have to happen for it to be an increase.
Okay, thanks. Appreciate it.
I think we're all set.
An easy year.
Huh?
An easy year.
Oh, that's what I told Margaret. First year as school committee chair, we go in here with a flat budget. I think this is the 4th one that we've had in the 20 years I've been here. But it wasn't. This is the easiest one. Some of the other ones were pretty much a challenge, and things fell into place for us as we moved along.
Can't foresee the future, but next year, I mean, do you think these subsidies are going to continue, or do you think next year?
Well, if you tell me you're going to build 250 more units, we're probably but
it's a goal. It isn't a reality.
Oh, okay. Well, well, it all depends. The numbers, they changed the formula a lot, so that you didn't see it for us, but a lot of districts didn't receive as much money because of the money that they took out for students economically disadvantaged. But where our numbers had already decreased, our free and reduced lunch numbers 20 years ago were 60-something%. Now they're down to 40-something. So the community's changing too, and so as a result, that wasn't as big a hit for us, and that's how they're paying for the school lunches. Is by it's all calculated, and all depends on who you talk to, but that's the challenges. Like some districts lost a bunch of money in economically disadvantaged funding because of the fact they couldn't collect the free and reduced lunch rates for kids, but we've actually received more, but less people qualify. So we're in a pretty good spot, but you're right, you can't predict the future. So state subsidy could change anytime, and if something happens and they lose their revenue, then we get hit with a curtailment, and then we have to go from there.
We'll go with what we got at the moment, right?
Right now, right now, as you said, it's a good time to be the school committee chair and the superintendent and board members, I guess.
Thank you.
Those are few and far between
Thank you.
sometimes, but
Thank you.
of course I'm not in Hawaii either.
No. It won't be much longer either.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Finance Committee, is there a presentation for the Finance Committee? That's on the agenda. I don't know if that's, or is that just
Just presented.
to
yeah.
the, okay. Is there a motion to accept the presentation, or do we just move forward?
I'm not sure, Glenn, is that somebody?
Historically, my school stuff was totally separate, so this is new to me.
Actually,
Well,
if
it's
you
in
want,
order, so.
I'll make a motion that we accept the information as presented. How's that?
I'll second it.
Can't hurt.
And who was the second? Joe Jean?
Yes.
Okay, roll call. Counselor Moore?
Aye.
Counselor Robichaud?
Yes.
Counselor Kane?
Yes.
Counselor Fellows?
Yes.
Counselor Keller?
Yes.
Counselor LaRochelle?
Yes.
Counselor Lunt?
Yes.
7 yeas, 0 nays, order passed 7-0.
I'd like to thank the school committee for all the work that you put into this budget. And I went through, as you said, there was a lot of zeros there today when I was going through it. That was real pleasant to see, so thank you for all the hard work that you put into it.
Next item.
Other business, council committee reports?
School Committee.
Can't get
Nothing
it.
more to add.
See you. Drop the mic on that one. Planning Board.
They meet Thursday the 9th. The last meeting was postponed until this Thursday. And there are 2 cases on it, about the routine cases so far. That's about what I have.
Lisbon Development Committee.
Lisbon, we haven't had any news since the last meeting.
Okay. Conservation Commission, haven't met since the last time I met him. Parks and Recreation.
I went to the meeting last night for a good part of it. Wasn't able to stay for the whole thing, but there was some good discussion. One of the things they've been working on is just the working rules and bylaws of the committee. One of the things about the Recreation Committee, the operating rules have been in place forever, and they really just need to be updated, because right now it basically states that the committee actually oversees the financial and hiring and firing, and it's probably, way before there was a council, those town meetings and stuff when that was still in. So they're looking to get that updated to be more practical for the committee, to actually have a more practical goals and function. A lot of discussion last night was on the budget coming up, and we did hear some of it last year, but one of the things that's going to be trying for a lot of groups, not just in municipality but in the regular world also, is the idea of the minimum wage, and changes coming up. They're going to struggle this year trying to maintain seasoned people for their summer program and coaching, only because in years past it's just been a very minimal return figure, for, basically minimum wage, whether you've been there a year or 2 years or 10 years. And this year coming up, the changes after, at one point, to be close to what, $14, almost $15 an hour. So
I think next January it goes up to 15, but don't quote me on it.
yeah, so it's very possible that a new high school student be hired for summer help could be making as much as a senior person that's been running the program for 10 years, which doesn't really work in today's environment. So I think they got to look at it pretty hard to figure out their programs. One benefit they have is they have a program that's very desired. So their summer programs, their sports programs are desired not just from the community but outside the community. And almost at some programs, it's up to a third of the people come from surrounding communities and to use the benefits of the summer programs we have. With that being said, there really hasn't been much of a price difference between local and away. which I think they're going to look at now. And actually, it's kind of like a solid waste department, right? It's you pay for usage, but also it's actually subsidized by the taxpayers, right? So it's a kind of split. And I think they need to kind of look at the summer programs the same way. The local people kind of pay for it twice, Jimmy, because it's part of their taxation and the idea they get paid for the services. So if someone's coming from outside of the area and only paying a small percent more, like $50 to $70 more than the average user, it's really not probably a fair comparison. So with that being said, they're going to look at the fee structure, and I think we'll see something in the next few weeks of trying to modify the idea of their fee structure to actually be able to pay for some of their returning tenured leadership be paid more, so they can actually have some benefit of coming back. And I mean, it's the way the world is, right? I mean, it's really hard. There's not a lot of difference between entry and seasoned people, and it's really hard to keep them coming back. And they've already, through the meeting they discussed, a couple of the people have been very dedicated over the last few years of not coming back this year just because of some of those reasons, So it's time to look at the fees and try to balance it. I mean, one of my biggest concern is the idea of raising too much to the people that really need it the most may not be beneficial to be able to get it. So another thing that Mark's going to be bringing forward is a scholarship that trying to put in place to actually help some families that may qualify for help that you do not want to see their families be left out because of financial changes. So I think they have a lot of work to do. I think the committee has definitely a big goal ahead of them, is try to balance out the idea of what's a fair charge to charge for the services, and how do you keep the people that really need it the most in the services and trying to get them benefit. So I think it's a lot can be coming forward. I think it's going to be a lot to council to look at. It's growing, right? I mean, it's crazy the amount of money that goes through kids and money. I shouldn't say just money, but it's not just a a $30,000-$40,000 program anymore. We're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars to go through those programs, and that all relies back on having good quality people running them, right? So if you don't have good quality people leading some of these programs and responsible enough to watch over a large group of kids, that they could actually go backwards very quickly. So the other thing that I wasn't able to stay for, but Mark kind of briefed me on it, was they were talking a little bit about the dog park potentially on Summer Street, and with all the other concerns I have right now, they didn't really think it was a priority for that group. And I was talking to Mark today, is the difference between the responsibilities of like the rec committee and the conservation committee. Where does that balance go? Is a dog park more of a conservation type discussion more so than a recreation? I guess it's hard to kind of, since Parks and Recs are all one, where the two different committees, what their goals should be, I guess. So that's for further discussion between the groups. And that's what I have.
Very good. County Budget Committee?
Nothing to report.
I think they finalized their budget. According to, we had Mr. Mason here, Commissioner Mason. I think that's a go. Library Board?
I had talked previously about the new online program for online books called Access 360. That's been rolled out, and you can take out 2 books for 2 weeks period using your library card from the library. So the books are purchased by Lisbon Library. There's 68 right now, and they'll be adding 4 or 5 more at a time. We have a program coming up with seniors called, which is SpringWorks Farm, and that will be Monday, which is kind of interesting because SpringWorks was featured on 207. So it'll be very interesting to see what they had to say to the seniors. The library now has 2 story times, and people are very pleased with the change in hours. So Friday and Saturday, there's a story time available. And adult circulation is up about 100 over last month.
Nice. Very nice. Thank you. Water Commission?
The Water Commission meets next week on the 14th at 5 p.m., which, so they don't have anything yet, but that brings up a question. What time are we meeting next week? Because I'd like to attend that one at 5. Do we know?
I think Lisa put it out to you all individually. Did we pick a time? Was it 5
She
or
asked
6?
if we're gonna meet at
I thought it was
again.
6.
Six.
Was it 6 or 5?
Well, she asked either
She asked.
5 or 6.
5, 6,
I
or
think it
7.
was
She
6.
asked it.
Yeah.
I think it was 6.
Why don't
I'll
we
let
go
you
with
know.
6?
Okay.
I said she
Five.
solicited the responses. I didn't see.
Well, it looks
you
like
wrote
6
back,
o'clock,
so
Dawn.
I don't
5.
know. I'm
5 o'clock?
When do we have to notice
Okay.
it by?
It's like 3
When do
o'clock
we have
for
to
him.
notice it by?
The Friday
Okay, I'll zoom
before.
around somehow.
All right.
Yeah, I'll reach out to you all tomorrow when I confirm she's back tomorrow, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
We never answered it, though.
Is there a
Finance?
consensus? I mean, maybe that's, maybe
Yeah,
to
you
me,
could
Yeah, I mean,
decide
6 o'clock
right
would
now, and I
definitely be
can let her
easier.
know when she's
5
in
o'clock would be
tomorrow.
very difficult for me, so.
Six works for me.
6 is fine for me. Works for me.
Yep, it's fine with me.
Yeah.
6 it is.
6?
We're gonna have to do a roll call.
6 p.m.
So
right?
instead of asking, you can tell her. It's,
Direct her to post the notice for 6 o'clock.
Finance Committee.
That would
Nothing
be-
from last time I reported out.
Next item, any appointments?
Next item is town manager's report.
Oh, I saw that, yeah.
He was going to skip right over you.
Just
No,
checking,
no
make
worries.
sure you're
So I got a couple things. Some counselors have reached out about the status of the building 6 Union Street. Our code enforcement officer made contact with the owner today. From a code enforcement standpoint, the property is secure from folks that can get in and access the building. We are working with the owner to see what they're going to be doing with the property, and we have let them know that the 196 master plan is also part of whatever ideas he may have. He mentioned some new ideas that he has for the property, but it is, I think, a non-conforming lot too. So Mark has been in touch with him and is kind of letting him know what he can and can't do, and I'll give you more updates as I have them. Second, I have a memo here from Steve Avioli. I would like to request authorization to solicit bids for the number 2 clarifier. It is in this year's capital improvement plan. It would the rehab would be to inspect the mechanical equipment and replace any worn parts and remove all corrosion, and then prep the epoxy paint on all exposed metal. $60,000 was budgeted for this work. Based on the current pricing, based on the current pricing, the plan, if approved, would be to solicit bids, but this work as a 2-part project. So this would be from the manufacturer for the inspection and replacement of any worn equipment. The timing for having this work completed may require some of it to be done during the next fiscal year, so he would like to plan to carry the funds necessary to complete this work next year if necessary. So just requesting authorization to put up the RFP for the project.
Is that something you want a motion on?
Yes, please.
I make a motion that we do what Steve wants because.
To rehab the number 2 clarifier.
Second that.
Yeah.
Is there a second?
Yeah, I'll second that.
Mark, second.
All right, roll call. Counselor Moore?
Aye.
Counselor Robichaud?
Yes.
Counselor Kane?
Yes.
Counselor Fellows?
Yes.
Counselor Keller?
Yes.
Counselor Larichelle?
Yes.
Counselor Lunt?
Yes.
7 yeas, 0 nays. Order passed 7-0.
So the last one I had, and I'm not sure if Chief LeClaire is still here or if he's watching in his office and is going to come in, but I wanted to request authorization to apply for the SAFER grant through FEMA, which would be to fund full-time firefighter positions. But based on my conversations with Nate, after year 3, when the funding ends, we would be expected to fund the positions fully for at least a year after. And we were still going back and forth on the number, so I don't want to speak for him without knowing for sure. But I wanted to say it was 2, but he is not in the room at the moment. So
And make a motion that we apply doesn't mean we actually have to.
yeah, that we can
Move forward.
start the application.
Yeah, at least actually to apply and see what it consists of.
I'll second it.
Yeah, how many current full-time firefighters do we have on staff now?
We have
Just
one.
the
We have 1.
Okay.
We have 2? Oh, we have 2.
Yeah, I thought we had the second one. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, so it's 2 plus the chief.
For discussion, when are we going to hear more about the numbers on this during the budget? Or
So he's deciding on how many he wants to apply for in the grant, because the expectation is after year 3 we would fully fund the position, and we can't use it to backfill. Like, so if we request 2 this year in this budget or 1 this year in this budget, we can't use, if you approve that in the budget, we can't use the grant to backfill it. So we didn't want to ask for more than we needed, essentially, and he was still kind of deciding on what that number would be.
Does he know the cost for when the grant runs out, what that 1-year cost is actually going to be? Has he done that homework? If, well, let's say he wants 1, what is that number? If he wants 2, what is that number? If he wants 3, what is that number? Because one way or another, it's going to cost the taxpayers at least a year to keep these employees.
I mean, I could ask Kayla while she's here. You may know the cost of a current FTE fire department, but I'm not going to just shoot from the hip, so
Right.
I don't have
I'm
that
just
answer.
wondering if he knows, right? Did he?
Pretty much what we're doing, though, we're just asking him to actually look into these numbers,
No,
right? And
yeah,
basically to apply for the grant and determine, I mean, there's an authorization to accept the grant.
In applying the grant, doesn't he have to tell them what the grant is for, how many?
I would
Yeah.
assume so, yeah.
And
We
because,
don't-
like I
but
said,
we-
it's
But we don't know the numbers for how many that's going to hit us in 3 years.
right.
I kind of feel like I want to hear from the chief before
Right.
Why don't we do it next Tuesday at our intro, budget intro? Or wait,
I would prefer that myself.
He's running.
I have a question, if I could.
Sure.
If
There he
if
is.
such an application for the grant is approved, is there an expectation within the grant that it be accepted?
Chief, probably can answer that
Grant, you
better.
never know with grants.
We got the chief coming up.
I'm sorry, I'm just walking in. What was your question, Don?
The question was, if we make application for that grant, in that application, if you should be granted it, is it expected that you would take it?
That's a question I would have to reach out and ask FEMA for. But at the end of the day, I still think you'd have to accept the grant. So you can deny the grant. You just have to go to somebody else. That's my expectation, but to give you an exact answer, I would have to call the
I've seen
representative.
some things before that, I think the police department had some that they expect you to accept it if you win it. And I'm not sure about that, but I thought there was something.
Yeah, I can tell you that the notice of funding opportunity that's listed as an 88-page document, so there's a lot of reading of stereo instructions.
And they
Mr.
dropped it
Chair.
fairly recently, and I think that
Yeah,
the
it opened on the 14th
yeah,
of
and the deadline's
February.
April, I think.
What was that?
Wasn't the deadline April too? So it's
The
pretty
deadline's
short.
no, it's next Friday,
Right. So they dropped it.
17th.
Yeah. Mr. Chair, may I ask?
Yes.
So we can't back fund full-time positions, right, since we actually have 2.
Correct.
But are we able to backfill our per diem? Because right now that is, I mean, we actually have people still on per diem, right, during the day?
Right, we could, this program is designed to use in multiple ways. One of them is staffing, another one is recruitment and things like that. So we can use it to staff with per diems, or we can use it to staff with full-time people. We can do it either way. I know several years ago, Yarmouth got this grant, and they used it to staff their per diem program with it. The problem with per diem program right now is we're pulling from the same pool of people who work per diem in all the other same towns, so.
Are we paying, what do we have? Why don't you explain what we have for current staff right now during the week as far as for per diem or full-time?
So currently what I do is we have 2 full-time people on Monday through Friday, 8 to 4. I have a slot open for one other per diem slot to fill that with them. So if that's filled, there's 3 people on 8 to 4. That third slot isn't always full. For an example, today's slot, the per diem person working today called out for child care issues. His kids were sick, he had to stay home, so we're moving from 3 to 2. The rest of the daytime crew is staffed by the on-call volunteer staff, and that is dwindling, especially during the daytime where we're seeing everybody's working from out of town. So that's where it comes down to, and we're seeing the daytime staff has always been made up of either people who are retired, people who work full-time firefighters and have days off during the week, or people who were like self-employed. The self-employed people have dwindled down because every time they leave work, it costs them money. So we don't see them anymore. The retired guys are getting older, and they're retiring from the fire department. Just recently, we lost Todd Roble. He's a retired Navy. He retired from the fire department back at the end of the calendar year, so we lost him. And then the other two gentlemen, there's a hourglass ticking away on those guys before they retire. They're in their upper 60s, so it's just a matter of time. And then the off-duty firefighters from Lewiston, those are the ones I have. Well, it's their days off, and they like going doing things themselves on their days off, which also opens to the point where I'm having the same issues on the weekends, because weekend days are getting hard to fill now, where people are doing things with their families and they don't want to have to commit. 30 years ago, we had 70 people in the fire department. You didn't notice it. But today, when you lose 30% of your roster because they want to go out of town, that's a big, big hit.
Are you thinking that maybe that some of the per diem full-timers actually fills in over weekends now? Is that your thought, or is that
Well, this part
potentially, right, at some point?
I mean, and we have a discussion on the 18th when we talk about the budget. But my plan is that I have to look at staffing 7 days a week because I'm not having that staffing during the daytime.
So the question is not whether we're going to have to do it. The question is whether or not we can get any grants to actually offset it.
Right, and that's why I want to go this direction. I was kind of looking at this to add on to where we want to go. The grant, I'll just kind of read this line really quick. It's to provide funding directly to fire departments and volunteer fire interest organizations to assist in increasing the number of firefighters to help communities meet industry minimum standards. They say attain 24-hour staffing to provide adequate fire protection. Blah, 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 blah. So it's there to help us try to get to those minimum staffing levels in the industry. Well, we can't do 24-hour coverage because I don't have places to put people on 24 hours a
Accommodations
day.
for it, yeah.
We can't do that part. But if we can try to meet those minimum standards of getting staffing on, and the minimum staffing standards, if just by looking at the OSHA requirements, is 4 firefighters before we can make entry into a not ideal atmosphere, and that doesn't have to be a fire. It can be something different. Depending on what the industry standard is, also where 4 people per engine company. NFPA says we need 14 firefighters on scene of a house fire for a town our size on the initial call, and we can't do that with our community right now. Not with the people I have.
The grant. Any idea what the total dollar figure is? What they actually have? Is that per state, or is that in FEMA, as in like the country?
I don't think I have it. I don't think I have it on this sheet on what this year's grant allocation is, but there's they have a X amount of money that they're going to divvy up to all the applicants.
So even if we don't get the grant this year, the idea of doing the head work ahead of time will actually allow us to be positioned good for next year to actually reapply.
Yep. Absolutely.
Is there nothing else? There's a motion on the table, right? We ready for a vote?
Yeah, you're going to vote on it?
Yep.
Okay. Roll call, Councilor Moore.
Aye.
Councilor Robichaud.
Yes.
Councilor Kane.
Yes.
Councilor Fellows.
Yes.
Councilor Keller.
Yes.
Councilor LaRochelle.
Yes.
Councilor Lund.
Yes.
7 yeas, 0 nays. Order passed 7-0.
Thank you, Chief.
So that'll do it for my town manager's report. You sent me this. Did you want me to put this up on the screen?
Yeah, for my next
Okay.
one. Is there any appointments?
None. Councilor Communications.
All right, I'll start. If you look at the screen, you can see that myself and Councilor Robichaud spent the how long were we there?
From 10:30 to 12:45.
Serving LCS kids lunch, and that's the staff who took good care of us and put us to work. Well, put me to work. Ray didn't do much, but put me to work. And it was a great time. We really enjoyed it. There's another picture, I think.
Yeah, let me pull
very professional-looking group.
Pizza, it was easy. Just slap a piece on the tray and this is two kids that are afraid to approach the thing because Ray's like, they're like, you go, and they're like, no, you go, no, you go. That's what I heard, anyways. But
It was a good time.
it was a good time. It was really enjoyable.
Yeah.
It was great. The kids were nice, and we had a few "Who are you?" questions, and we had to explain who we were. So that was it was nice. And the teachers, the SRO Renee was going to send something out to all the teachers, but she forgot about it. But some of the teachers knew that we were coming, and they took the opportunity to talk to the kids beforehand about the government in town and things like that. So they kind of had an idea of who we were. So it was really good. It was a good time. We enjoyed it.
Trying to earn that big salary you get, that's all.
Yeah. And we expected Joe Jean to show up. And she never showed up. And then when we were done, because I didn't have my phone, I saw a email like, "Is it at the high school?"
Yeah.
So did you go to the high school and sit? You didn't sit there. Did you go to the CAF and say, "I'm ready to work"?
No.
Oh, well, you should have.
No, but I was distracted because, and I just wanted to give a note of appreciation to the sanitary sewer video inspection that I got a notice for, and then last week they came around. They were hired by the town of Lisbon. They came around to visually inspect sewer lines to make sure when McGee comes through that they know where all the sewer lines are. So I'm just really appreciative of the communication and of the fact that they did that.
All right, so we've got the school and sewer.
All mixed in one.
Anybody else?
Just to follow up on the Union Street building, it would be really awesome if there would just be some time frames put in place to, because I know some of the people, even though it's safe to actually walk around, it's still very much not a safe building in a sense. So it'd be nice once we actually work with the owner to come up with some written agreement on time frame and what's expected. That's all. I mean, I'm not sure if other communities have. I know when you see something like that happen in other communities around us, within the next week or so, it's coming down. Just not to be a concern to the neighborhood. That's all. But
So he's been made aware of the, I don't know what it's called, the dangerous building statute. So Mark is kind of letting him know that that's an option if he
needs to, yeah.
needs to use it. So
Yep.
So we'll be in touch with him and kind of let him know.
That's great. Appreciate that.
Yeah, I'd just like to thank all the guys in Public Works for keeping our streets plowed through 3 pretty bad storms right in a row in 1 week, and also all the CMP line workers who got people back on power when power was out for a bit there. So thanks to all you guys out there working in these difficult winter conditions.
Additionally, with Public Works, we had a water main break in front of our next door neighbor's house the snow day that the town was actually closed, but they managed to get people over there and deal with it and not have our water down for too long.
Ray, do you want to speak to the lack of work you did at the school when I did all the work? You're welcome to.
Yeah. No, it absolutely was a great time. The staff in the kitchen, the teachers, they were all very supportive. It was really nice for me to see that the kids were being taught about veterans. So when Council Moore brought his hat with him, the submarine hat, I was very pleased to see how many kids asked about it, what it meant, what did he do, you're a veteran, and they have another volunteer veteran, I guess, that goes and sees the kids quite often, does some work down there. So it was nice to see that young being involved and understanding what veterans are all about. So I thought that was very nice. So good job to the teachers doing that. But overall, like Harry said, we sat with them, talked to them, very friendly. They asked if we were coming back. I says, I'll come back if they want us to come back. If all I'm going to do is love to do it. It was a good time, very good time. Glad I did it. I'm glad I was asked to go do it. So thank you for allowing us to do that.
Nice.
I have a question, if you could.
Yes, sir.
How did that come about? And whose idea was it?
Which idea?
That the school serving lunch.
That was my idea, Don. And the reason.
Maybe somebody invited you to do it or whatever.
Nope.
If you saw how much pizza he ate, that's why he picked Pizza Day. I had none, by the way.
I asked
Free pizza day.
I asked the staff when pizza day was. They said Friday. I says, we're there. We served a lot of pizza. I'll tell you what.
Slick operation.
There's a lot of kids in that school. 400 and maybe you got.
Yeah, I was going to say there's over 400. But it was slick, too.
In
I mean, wow.
LCS? Really?
They just didn't let the other 200 come through.
200 of them must have brown bagged it because I think we served 400. They said we served 400 or something. But it was really good, really nice.
Oh, I think we ran out of pizza. That's why the other 200 stopped.
We were, yeah. We got to the point where like they want cheese and we didn't have any more, so we're giving them pepperoni. Tell them to take the pepperonis off. God kept saying, just give them to me. But it was good. And what's really cool is when we had a break in between classes when they were still eating, I just went down, walked in, and sat in one of the benches, just kind of squeezed in with next to these kids and just sitting there and just looking at them. They're like, it was really, really cool. They're very conversant. They start out with, who are you? Why are you sitting here?
Is that where the trauma coaches come
really
in
good.
the week after? And
It was good. All right. Is there anything else?
I'm good.
Okay.
Next item, audience participation and response for new items. At this time, those in the audience who wish to speak may approach the lectern to address items or issues that are not in the agenda. Please use the microphone and state your name for the record.
Margaret? Nothing? Len? Nothing? You're quiet this time? Nobody wants to speak? Next item?
Executive session order 2023-41 to go into executive session per 1 MRSA section 4056A personnel matters.
I'll make a motion to go in.
A second.
Roll call.
Roll call.
Counselor Moore?
Aye.
Counselor Robichaud?
Yes.
Counselor Kane?
Yes.
Counselor Fellows?
Yes.
Counselor Keller?
Yes.
Counselor LaRochelle?
Yes.
Counselor Lunt?
Yes.
7 yeas, no nays, 7-0, order passed.
Thank you for coming in.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Bye, Margaret.
Harry, you wanted me to step out, right? Until you call me in?
Nice job, Lisa.
Thank you.
Do you want to do you have something you want to go over too, or initially, right? Or will you?
We can do that. So I wasn't sure. I know you wanted me to